Welcome to the sleepy underworld, a place where romance blooms, magic sparkles, and timeless fairy tales are reimagined for the dreamers of today. From heart-stirring romances to spellbinding adventures, every story is a soothing escape into a realm of love, wonder, and charm. So curl up, press play, and let us carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We'd love to know in what part of the world you are watching and what is your favorite tip for a good night's sleep. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. My fingers trembled as I turned the doorknob that May morning. The blue door, the one we'd painted together 7 years ago when we first bought this house, creaked open to reveal a social worker cradling a bundle wrapped in a soft pink blanket. Time slowed as she placed that precious bundle in my waiting arms. Lila. I breathed in her newborn scent, feeling the delicate weight of her body against my chest. Each tiny breath she took matched the rhythm of my thundering heart. Max stood beside me, his strong frame suddenly vulnerable, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "She's perfect," I whispered, tracing my finger along the velvet softness of her cheek. "Just like her mother," Max replied, his voice breaking as he wrapped his arm around us. The social worker explained something about follow-up visits and final paperwork, but her words drifted past me like leaves on a breeze. All I could focus on was the miracle in my arms, this beautiful baby girl whose birth mother had chosen us to be her parents. We were finally a family after 7 years of heartbreak, of nurseries left empty, and dreams left shattered. That evening I sat in the rocking chair beside her crib, watching moonlight paint silver patterns across her sleeping face. Each rise and fall of her tiny chest felt like a gift. I memorized every detail, the way her small fists curled near her chin, how her eyelashes fanned against her cheeks, the soft baby sounds that escaped her lips as she dreamed. "You're staring again," Max whispered from the doorway, 2 steaming mugs of chamomile tea in his hands. "I can't help it," I admitted. "Part of me still fears I'll wake up and discover this was all a dream." He placed the mugs on the dresser and knelt beside my chair, resting his head in my lap. I ran my fingers through his dark curls, the familiar texture grounding me in this new reality we shared. "She's really ours, Ellie," he murmured. "She's home." Home. The word held new meaning now. Those first weeks transformed our house in ways I never imagined. The nursery, which I'd abandoned 18 months earlier after my second miscarriage, suddenly burst with purpose. I painted the walls a soft lavender, the color of twilight and new beginnings. Max assembled the crib we'd stored in the attic, his hands steady and sure this time, not trembling like they had during our years of fertility treatments. "What do you think of these?" Max asked one afternoon, holding up star-shaped decals that glowed in the dark. "They're perfect," I replied, imagining Lila gazing up at her own personal constellation. We placed them carefully across the ceiling, creating patterns that mirrored the real stars visible through her window. Later that night, with the lights turned off, we lay on the floor beneath them, Lila nestled between us. "Now she'll always sleep under the stars," Max whispered, "even when it's cloudy outside." I reached for his hand across our daughter's sleeping form, our fingers intertwining as they had countless times before, through doctor's appointments that ended in disappointment, through nights when hope felt like a distant memory. Now, our joined hands created a bridge above the daughter who had found her way to us through a different kind of miracle. Spring bloomed into summer. I watched Lila discover the world with wide, curious eyes. Her first genuine smile appeared when Max held her up to the kitchen window to watch mourning doves gather at our bird feeder. Her first laugh, pure magical music, burst forth during a diaper change when I blew raspberries on her round belly. "Did you hear that?" I called to Max, who rushed in from the garden, dirt still clinging to his hands. "Do it again," he urged, kneeling beside us. I repeated my silly noise against her stomach, and she rewarded us with another peal of laughter that filled the room with joy. Max captured the moment on his phone, and we watched the video dozens of times that night, marveling at the sound that had been missing from our home for so long. Summer days stretched long and languid. We spent afternoons in the backyard beneath the ancient maple tree. Lila nestled between us on a patchwork quilt my grandmother had made. I read aloud from gardening catalogs while Max dozed beside us, one hand resting protectively on Lila's tiny chest. "We should plant something," I suggested one particularly golden afternoon, closing the seed catalog. "A tree, maybe. Something that will grow alongside her." Max opened his eyes, squinting against the dappled sunlight filtering through the maple leaves. "What kind?" "Apple," I answered without hesitation. "So she can pick fruit from her own tree when she's older. Maybe make pies with her children someday." The next weekend, we drove to the local nursery, Lila secured in her car seat, cooing at the scenery passing by her window. The nursery smelled of rich earth. We selected a young apple sapling, its slender trunk already reaching confidently toward the sky. That evening, as the sun painted the horizon in shades of pink and gold, we planted the tree together. Max dug the hole while I held Lila, letting her tiny fingers touch a leaf from her tree. "See that, little one?" I whispered. "That's your tree. You'll grow together." After settling the sapling in its new home, we stood back to admire our work. The young tree seemed to stand taller, as if aware of its importance in our family's story. "To new beginnings," Max said, raising his water bottle in a toast. "To Lila and all her tomorrows," I added, linking my arm through his as our daughter watched the tree's leaves dance in the evening breeze. July brought heat that shimmered above the pavement. We filled a tiny inflatable pool in the shade of the maple tree, and I dipped Lila's feet into the cool water. Her eyes widened in surprise before her face split into a delighted grin. "I think we have a little fish on our hands," Max laughed, snapping photos. "Like her father," I teased, remembering how Max had once been a competitive swimmer in college. He knelt beside the pool and splashed his fingers through the water, creating tiny rainbows in the sunlight. Lila watched, entranced, then slapped her own palms against the surface in imitation, soaking us both. Our laughter mingled with the summer sounds, cicadas humming in the trees, birds calling to one another, the distant chime of an ice cream truck making its rounds through the neighborhood. These ordinary moments had become extraordinary because we shared them with her. I never knew happiness could be this simple. I confessed that night as we lay in bed, the baby monitor glowing softly on the nightstand. "Or this complete," Max added, pulling me closer. August brought Lila's first tooth, its tiny edge appearing like a pearl beneath her gum. It also brought sleepless nights filled with her discomfort, her usual contentment replaced by tears that broke my heart. "Maybe we should call the pediatrician," I worried after her third night of fitful sleep, dark circles shadowing my eyes. "Dr. Abbott said this is normal," Max reminded me gently, taking Lila from my arms. "Let me walk with her for a while. You rest." I collapsed onto our bed, intending to close my eyes for just a moment. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the curtains. Panicked, I rushed to the nursery, only to find it empty. I followed the sound of soft guitar music to the living room. There, I discovered Max asleep on the couch, Lila peacefully slumbering on his chest. His guitar lay beside them, one hand still resting on its strings. I stood in the doorway, committing the scene to memory, how the morning light gilded their sleeping forms, how their chests rose and fell in perfect synchronization, how Max's protective arm cradled our daughter even in sleep. This was my family, not formed in the way I'd once imagined, but no less miraculous for taking a different path. September arrived with cooler breezes and changing leaves. Lila grew more mobile each day, rocking on her hands and knees, determined to crawl. We cheered each attempt, each small victory bringing her closer to independence. One evening, as I prepared dinner, Max called from the living room, excitement vibrating in his voice. "Ellie, hurry!" I abandoned the half-chopped vegetables and rushed in to find Lila on her hands and knees, rocking determinedly, eyes focused on a colorful toy just beyond her reach. "She's going to do it," Max whispered, phone already recording. We watched, barely breathing, as she pushed forward, her arms trembling with effort. One knee moved, then the other. 3 wobbly movements later, she reached her goal, collapsing onto her belly beside the toy. We erupted in applause. Startled, Lila looked up at us, her face breaking into a gummy smile that displayed her single tooth. "That's our girl," I said through happy tears. "So determined." "Just like her mother," Max replied, kissing my temple. Later that night, after Lila had fallen asleep, we watched the video of her first crawl at least a dozen times. Each viewing felt like witnessing a miracle, not just the physical milestone, but the emotional journey that had brought us to this moment. "Remember when we couldn't imagine this?" Max asked, his arm around my shoulders. "I remember everything," I admitted. The negative pregnancy tests, the failed treatments, the silence in this house that felt like it would swallow us whole. And now I know that family isn't something that happens to you," I said, turning to face him. "It's something you choose, every day, in 1,000 small ways." He brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "I'd choose you and her 1,000 times over." October brought our first Halloween as parents. I spent evenings sewing a ladybug costume, complete with spotted wings and a headband with bouncing antennae. "She's too young for trick-or-treating," I protested, when Max insisted we take her around the neighborhood. "We're not doing it for candy," he countered, adjusting her costume. "We're doing it to show our neighbors what a miracle looks like." We bundled Lila against the autumn chill and strolled through streets lined with jack-o'-lanterns and fake cobwebs. Neighbors who'd witnessed our years of struggle cooed over her, many having followed our journey through fertility treatments and adoption. Mrs. Henderson, who had lived next door since we moved in, slipped a card into our treat bag instead of candy. Later, curled on the couch with Lila asleep between us, we read her note. "Some miracles take longer than others, but yours was worth the wait." I traced my finger over her handwritten words, remembering how she'd brought meals after each failed treatment, how she'd continued to ask about adoption, even when others had stopped mentioning children around us. "We should invite her for Thanksgiving," I suggested. "We should invite everyone who stood by us," Max agreed. "Everyone who kept believing in our family even when we sometimes lost faith ourselves." November arrived with frost-covered mornings and the scent of wood smoke in the air. Lila discovered the joy of crunching leaves, giggling when Max piled them up and let her pat at the colorful heap. Thanksgiving approached, and we planned a celebration unlike any we'd hosted before. Both our families would attend, though the relationships remained somewhat complicated. Some relatives had pulled away during our fertility struggles, uncomfortable with our pain or uncertain how to support us. Others had been steadfast, sending cards and prayers, and when Lila arrived, embracing their new roles as grandparents and aunts and uncles with wholehearted enthusiasm. I spent the day before Thanksgiving preparing, peeling potatoes at the kitchen counter, while Lila played in her exerciser nearby. "Mama," she called, reaching toward me with grabby hands. The potato and peeler clattered into the sink as I turned, my heart racing. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "Mama," she repeated, bouncing excitedly. I scooped her up, potato starch still clinging to my hands, and peppered her face with kisses until she squealed with laughter. "Max!" I called. "Max, come quick!" He rushed in from the garage where he'd been setting up extra tables, concern etched on his face until he saw us laughing. "She said, 'Mama.'" I I explained, tears gathering in my eyes. Her first real word. Can you say Dada? Max asked, moving closer. Lila smiled her toothy grin. She had 3 teeth now, and reached for his face. Mama, she repeated confidently. We all dissolved into laughter, the kitchen filled with joy that spilled over like a cup too full to contain its contents. Thanksgiving Day dawned bright and clear, the house filled with delicious aromas and the buzz of family conversations. Lila, dressed in a tiny corduroy jumper with embroidered leaves, charmed everyone with her new word, which she now applied liberally to anyone who held her. She has your eyes, Max's mother observed, bouncing Lila on her knee by the living room window. She has her own eyes, I corrected gently, having learned this response in our adoption classes. Lila belonged to us, but she also carried the legacy of her birth parents, a heritage we plan to honor as she grew. Well, his mother persisted, she certainly has your determination. Look how she's reaching for that toy. I accepted this comparison with a smile. The parts of ourselves we would pass to Lila weren't genetic, but intentional. Our values, our love, our persistence in the face of obstacles. After dinner, when everyone gathered in the living room for coffee and dessert, Max disappeared briefly. He returned with his guitar and settled on the piano bench. I've been working on something, he announced, his eyes finding mine across the room. A song for our daughter. The room quieted as his fingers found the opening chord. The melody that filled our home was gentle yet strong, like a river finding its way to the sea. Inevitable, persistent, full of purpose. As he played, I watched our families listening, their faces softening with understanding. This song told our story without words. The waiting, the heartbreak, the unexpected joy we'd discovered when we opened ourselves to a different path. When the final notes faded, the silence held for a heartbeat before everyone applauded. Lila, sitting in my lap, clapped her hands in delight, clearly recognizing her father's special song. That was beautiful, my sister whispered, squeezing my hand. He's been playing it for her since the day she arrived, I explained. It changes a little each time, growing as she grows. December transformed our neighborhood into a wonderland of twinkling lights and holiday decorations. We brought home a small pine tree and decorated it with handmade ornaments, including Lila's first, a tiny clay impression of her hand, painted gold and dated with the year. On Christmas Eve, after a day filled with family visits and holiday traditions, I found myself alone in Lila's nursery. She slept peacefully in her crib, exhausted from the excitement. Through the window, I could see the apple tree we'd planted, its bare branches reaching toward the star-filled sky. In spring, it would bloom with delicate pink flowers. In summer, small fruit would form. In autumn, we would harvest the first apples together, Lila old enough to help gather them in a basket. Max joined me, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. To our first Christmas together, he whispered, handing me a glass. To all the Christmases to come, I replied, clinking my glass softly against his. We stood in comfortable silence, watching our daughter sleep. The path that had brought us here wasn't the one we'd planned, but standing in that quiet nursery, I couldn't imagine any other journey. The biological children we'd once longed for remained dreams, but the daughter sleeping before us was our reality, a different miracle, no less precious for having arrived unexpectedly. I thought about the waiting families still hoping, trying, believing. Our name on a list somewhere had matched with a young woman's wish for her child's future. That serendipitous pairing had transformed 3 lives, ours and hers, creating a family across biology, beyond blood, built on choice and boundless love. I wonder if she knows, I whispered, how long we waited for her, how perfectly she fits into our hearts. She'll know, Max assured me, We'll tell her the story, how we searched for her before we even knew her name, how we prepared a place for her long before we held her, how she completed us in ways we couldn't have imagined. Outside, snow began to fall, soft flakes drifting past the window. The world grew quieter, as if nature itself was pausing to acknowledge the peace within our home. "Remember our first Christmas in this house?" Max asked. "How empty it felt, even with all the decorations." I nodded, remembering how we'd filled the silence with cheerful music and bright ornaments, attempting to create the family holiday we'd both dreamed about. "And now?" he prompted. "Now it feels full," I answered simply. "Not because of the gifts or the tree or the visitors. Because of her," he finished. "Because of all three of us," I corrected, leaning into his embrace. "Because we finally found one another." January arrived with its clean slate and fresh beginnings. We celebrated Lila's first New Year with sparkling cider at noon and an early bedtime. The rhythms of our family life settled into comfortable patterns: morning playtime, afternoon walks to the park, evening baths that left the bathroom floor soaked and our hearts overflowing. One snowy afternoon, while Lila napped, I found Max in our home office, surrounded by papers. "What's all this?" I asked, picking up what appeared to be a brochure. "Information about finalizing the adoption," he explained. I sank into the chair beside him, suddenly overwhelmed by the significance of the milestone. Soon, Lila would be legally ours, though she'd claimed our hearts the moment we'd seen her. "Are you worried?" Max asked, noticing my expression. "Not about the legal part," I admitted. "I just keep thinking about her birth mother. What this day will mean for her." Max nodded, understanding. We'd met Lila's birth mother only once, briefly, but I often thought about her courage, her sacrifice, her love expressed through the hardest kind of letting go. "I want Lila to know her story," I said. "All of it. Not just how she came to us, but where she came from. The brave young woman who loved her enough to find her a family when she couldn't be one herself." "We'll tell her," Max promised, "when she's old enough to understand. And we'll honor her birth mother by raising Lila to know she was loved from the very beginning, by her first mother and by us." I leaned my head against his shoulder, grateful for his wisdom, for his ability to see the complete circle of love that had brought Lila into our lives. Later that evening, after tucking Lila into her crib, I sat at my desk and began writing in a journal, a record of our journey, a letter to our daughter, a promise to remember every step of the path that had led us to her. I wanted her to know someday that the most beautiful families aren't always formed in the most conventional ways. I wrote until midnight, filling pages with memories. The day she arrived, her first smile, the sound of her laughter, the way Max's eyes lit up when she said Dada for the first time, 2 weeks after Mama, much to my amusement. I described the apple tree growing in the backyard, the stars on her ceiling, the song her father played each night. When I finally closed the journal, I felt a sense of completion. The house around me, once so empty it echoed with silence, now hummed with life and purpose. The blue door that had witnessed so many tearful homecomings after failed procedures now opened daily to new adventures. 3 pairs of footprints tracked across welcome mats in mud and snow and sunshine. I paused in the hallway outside Lila's room, listening to her soft breathing through the partially open door. Max appeared beside me, wrapping his arm around my waist. "Everything okay?" he whispered. I nodded, leaning into his familiar warmth. "I was just thinking about doors." "Doors?" he echoed, puzzled. How many closed for us over the years, and how the right one finally opened. He kissed the top of my head, understanding without further explanation. In the nursery, Lila stirred slightly, then settled back into peaceful slumber. Outside, the apple tree stood sentinel in the moonlit yard, its branches silvered with frost, waiting patiently for spring. Inside, the three of us breathed in rhythm, a family created not by chance or biology, but by choice and circumstance, and a love that had finally found its way home. The journey that brought us here, through heartbreak and hope, through loss and love, had led us exactly where we belonged. Home wasn't just the house with the blue door. It was wherever the three of us were together, creating memories from moments, building a future from faith, and proving every day that the greatest families are those built with open hearts, willing to receive the unexpected gifts that arrive when we least expect them, but need them most. And in my daughter's peaceful breathing, I heard the most beautiful truth. Some miracles arrive exactly when they're meant to, not a moment before, not a second too late, but precisely when our hearts are ready to receive them. I held the gold necklace between my fingers, tracing the circle of the empty charm as rain streaked down our bedroom window. Anderson was already asleep beside me, his breathing steady and deep. I wondered what it would sound like to hear him whisper goodnight to our child. Funny how time shifts when you're waiting for something. In my 20s, days rushed by like a fast-forward sequence. But now, at 35, each month stretched into what felt like a year. The calendar on my phone marked cycles of hope and disappointment in neat little blocks. Red X after red X. "Your numbers look fine," Dr. Miller had said that morning, tapping her pen against my chart. Sometimes these things just take time. Time. We'd given it 3 years. 3 years of vitamins and temperature charts and perfectly timed moments that should have been about love, not planning. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Outside, our neighborhood glowed amber under the streetlights. Somewhere in those houses lived the family we'd always imagined becoming. The one with the swing set in the backyard and crayon drawings on the refrigerator. "Can't sleep?" Anderson's voice rumbled sleepy and warm behind me. I turned. Even in the dim light, I could see the concern in his eyes. My husband of 6 years still looked at me like he had on our first date, like I was the most precious thing in his world. "I keep thinking about that call yesterday," I admitted. "Yesterday?" Michelle's voice crackling through the phone. "My cousin knows this adoption counselor in Texas. Just thought I'd mention it." Anderson sat up, reaching for my hand. "We said we'd take a break from all this." "I know. We'd tried everything. The herbs my sister-in-law swore by, the acupuncturist who promised to unlock my womb. The fertility treatments left me bloated and weepy. Even a consultation with a surrogacy agency felt too clinical, too removed from the magical process of creating life. Each failure chipped away at something inside me. Not my love for Anderson. If anything, watching him hold friends' babies with such gentle care only made me love him more. But my confidence in my own body, in our path forward, had taken a beating. "We don't have to think about it now," Anderson said, pulling me back to bed. I curled into his familiar warmth. But that night, I dreamed of a baby with Anderson's dimples and my laugh. When I woke, the necklace was still in my palm, the charm still blank. I almost deleted Michelle's follow-up email. Twice. My finger hovered over the trash icon for what felt like forever before I finally opened it. Her name is Sarah Martinez. She works with birth mothers across the Southwest. I didn't want to push, but I thought you should at least have her contact info. No pressure, just an option. Just an option became my mantra that week. While Anderson was at work, I looked up Sarah's website. Her photo showed a woman with kind eyes and graying temples. Testimonials filled the page with phrases like, "Found our forever family," and "Dreams came true." I'd sworn off reading adoption success stories. They felt like salt in an open wound. But something about Sarah's approach seemed different. Her bio mentioned intuitive matching and following the heart's guidance. I copied her number into my phone but didn't call. Instead, I tucked it into my nightstand drawer next to the empty charm necklace. 2 weeks later, Anderson found me crying in the shower. Not the quiet tears I tried to hide at work or during dinners with friends who announced pregnancies with ease. Full, body-racking sobs that left me gasping. Hey. He was still fully dressed, water soaking through his shirt as he gathered me against his chest. What brought this on? I saw her today, the baby from my dream, a little girl at the coffee shop with your exact dimples. Her mom was telling her a joke, and she laughed. My words dissolved into fresh tears. Anderson turned off the water and wrapped me in a towel. We sat on the bathroom floor, and he rubbed my back as I finally spoke the truth we'd both been dancing around. I don't think my body is going to give us a baby. The words hung between us, stark and final. Okay, he said simply. Okay? Jessica. He tilted my chin up. I married you, not your theoretical ability to reproduce. You. If you want to explore adoption, we will explore adoption. If you want to stop trying altogether and just be us, that's okay too. But this... He touched my chest, right over my heart. Is what I need. You and I, together. That night, I pulled Sarah's number from the drawer. Sarah had a way of talking that felt like drinking warm tea. Her voice carried comfort through the phone line. Adoption isn't a backup plan, Jessica. It's a different road to the same destination. Family. She explained her process. I work with expectant mothers who've chosen adoption. They're not giving up babies. They're creating families. The connection happens naturally. I don't force matches. When it's right, everyone feels it. Have you matched many families recently? 3 this year so far. Each one came together uniquely. She paused. Are you and Anderson together on this? Yes. He's been amazing through everything. Good. Because when the right situation comes along, you'll need to move quickly. And it will come. I have that feeling about you too. Over the next month, Anderson and I filled out paperwork, attended virtual seminars, and slowly opened ourselves to a different dream. We talked about race and culture, medical histories, and open versus closed adoptions. Each conversation peeled back another layer of what family could mean. I started carrying the necklace everywhere, rubbing the smooth charm between meetings at work. Hope wasn't something I'd felt for so long that I'd forgotten its texture. This felt like the start of that return. Sarah's call came on a Tuesday in February. Snow was falling, the kind of perfect flakes that make the world look like a snow globe. Jessica, I have a situation that might be unique. My heart pressed against my ribs. Tell me. There's a young woman in Austin, Texas, Daniela. She's 23 and already has a 3-year-old daughter. This pregnancy was unexpected. She's in school, working part-time. The baby's due next month. I grabbed a pen. Okay. She specifically asked for a couple who've been through fertility struggles. She said she wants parents who'll never take parenthood for granted. The words struck me silent. Daniela grew up in a big extended family, Sarah continued. She wants open communication, letters, photos, maybe occasional visits. The father, he's not involved. She made this choice alone. That evening, Anderson and I read Daniela's letter together. Her handwriting was careful, deliberate. I believe every child deserves parents who are ready for them. Not just financially or practically, but emotionally. You've waited so long for this gift. I think you'll treasure it in a way others might not. She'd included a sonogram photo. The tiny form looked like a dream beginning to take shape. We should go to Austin, Anderson said. Really? If she's willing to meet us, yes, absolutely. We flew out the following weekend, Texas in February carried a different kind of chill. Clear skies but biting wind. Sarah had arranged for us to meet Daniela at a quiet cafe near her apartment. She was smaller than I expected, with long dark hair and an oversized sweater that couldn't hide her pregnancy. Her 3-year-old daughter, Sophia, colored intently at the table. "Hi," I managed, my voice catching. Daniela stood to greet us. Up close, I could see the determination in her eyes. This was not a young woman making decisions lightly. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know this is unconventional." We talked for 2 hours. She asked about our jobs, our families, and our house. She wanted to know about Anderson's golf playing and my terrible cooking attempts. Normal questions that painted a picture of the life she wanted for her child. Sophia had Anderson's attention within minutes, chattering about her dolls and her favorite cartoons. Watching them interact, I felt something shift inside me. Not just hope, but rightness. "I should tell you," Daniela said, stirring her hot chocolate. "I've met with 2 other couples." My stomach dropped. "But neither felt like family. You do." She looked directly at me. "I see it in how you look at him when he's talking to Sophia. How he looks at you when I mention the baby's kicks. You two have love ready to expand." That night in our hotel, I called Sarah from the bathroom while Anderson showered. "She's considering us," I whispered. "She's doing more than that," Sarah said gently. "She's chosen you. She just needs time to be certain." The certainty came 3 days later. Daniela's text arrived while I was making breakfast. "It's you two. When can you come back?" The next month blurred into beautiful chaos. We flew to Austin twice, meeting Daniela's family, attending doctor's appointments, and decorating the hotel suite nursery style for our expected stay. Daniela opened up more with each visit. She admitted her fears about open adoption. Would seeing the child grow up with us be too painful? Would we eventually shut her out? "We won't," Anderson promised. "You're giving us the most precious gift. That doesn't end when she's born." "She?" Daniela smiled. "Did the doctor tell you?" "No, but Jessica has dreams. They're usually right." I felt my cheeks warm. "Not always." "With this one?" "I think so," Daniela said, placing her hand on her belly. The baby kicked right then, strong enough that I could see the movement. Daniela took my hand, pressing it to the spot. The flutter against my palm sent tears to my eyes. This wasn't my body creating life, but somehow it felt like my child saying hello. On March 15th, at 3:47 a.m., my phone rang. Daniela's voice trembled with excitement. "It's time." We'd been in Austin for 3 days already, just waiting. The drive to the hospital happened in fast forward. Anderson held my hand so tight I lost circulation, but I didn't tell him to loosen his grip. Daniela labored for 8 hours. We stayed in the waiting room, pacing, praying, calling family with updates. When a nurse finally called us back, my legs felt disconnected from my body. "She wants you there for the birth," the nurse explained. "She says you're family." Watching a child enter the world is indescribable. Hearing her first cry, seeing the crinkled face and tiny fists, I understood why people call it a miracle. Daniela looked exhausted but radiant. "Do you want to hold her?" she asked me. I could only nod. The nurse placed the baby in my arms. She was smaller than I expected, her skin impossibly soft. When her dark eyes met mine, something clicked into place. A puzzle piece I didn't know was missing. "Hi, Hope," I whispered, testing the name that had lived in my heart all this time. Anderson wrapped his arms around us both. I felt his lips against my temple as he whispered, "Thank you," meant for Daniela, for God, for the universe itself. We spent 3 days at the hospital with Daniela. She breastfed Hope those first days, wanting to give her that start. It was intimate and complex and beautiful. We talked about the future, the letters and pictures, the yearly visits that Daniela wanted. "I need you both to promise something," Daniela said on our last night in Austin. She'd just finished feeding Hope and passed her to Anderson. "Promise you'll tell her this story. Not just that she's adopted, but how much love and thought went into creating her family." "We promise," we said together. Before we left, Daniela pressed something into my hand, a tiny envelope. "Open it when you get home." Home. We'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, but reality surpassed every dream. Walking through our front door with Hope felt like the house exhaled for the first time. The nursery we'd painted last month glowed in the afternoon light. We placed Hope in her crib, watching her sleep after the journey. She looked so small against the white sheets, but also perfectly where she belonged. That evening, while Anderson dozed on the couch with Hope on his chest, I remembered Daniela's envelope. Inside was a note. "Jessica, you mentioned a necklace with a charm you wanted to engrave. I hope you find the perfect name. Love, Daniela." I reached for the necklace, then searched my jewelry box for something. Finding it, I smiled at my own forgetfulness. We'd been carrying Hope's name all along. But I didn't engrave Hope on the charm. The next day, I took it to the local jeweler. When he asked what I wanted engraved, I thought of Daniela's letter, of all the twisting roads that led us here, of the way hope transforms into something real when you refuse to let it go. "Hope," I said, in script lettering. 6 months later, we returned to Austin for our first visit. Daniela looked healthier, stronger. She held Hope with practiced ease, pointing out family resemblances. "She has her father's nose, but your smile now." It was true. Hope's smiles had become generous, full-face expressions that lit up rooms. That night, after Sophia and Hope were asleep, the three of us sat on Daniela's back porch. Cicadas hummed in the darkness. "Thank you," I said. Not for the first time, but with new depths of meaning. "For choosing us, for trusting us." Daniela nodded. "I see it in how she looks at you, like you're her whole world. That's what I wanted." Anderson leaned forward. "And we see it in how you look at her too. She has so much love surrounding her." We talked until midnight about everything and nothing, Hope's favorite foods, our families, Daniela's plans to finish school. Love took shapes I hadn't expected, complex, layered, expanding to include room for everyone. Flying home, I held Hope against my shoulder as she fussed sleepily. My fingers found the necklace, tracing the single engraved word. Hope. Not just what I'd carried through the hardest years, but what we'd built together, all of us. What we'd continue building with every letter, every visit, every moment of honoring the love that created this unlikely, perfect family. The roads hadn't been straight or easy. They'd wound through heartbreak and healing, through choices and chances we never could have imagined. But here we were, flying home with our daughter, connected by invisible threads to others who shared in our joy. Hope delivered on her promise. She hadn't just brought us a child. She'd shown us that family isn't bound by biology or predetermined paths. It's forged in the courage to stay open, to wait, to believe that somewhere out there, your people are waiting too. As Hope settled deeper into sleep, I looked out the airplane window at the lights scattered across the dark landscape below. Somewhere down there, in one of those glowing points, was our life, waiting for us to continue writing its story. Every heartbeat, every breath, every moment moving forward was an answer to prayers whispered in the dark. Hope had a name now. She had a home. She had parents who'd spent years learning that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings arise from the surrender of original plans. I pressed my lips to her downy head. She smelled like Daniela's lavender soap in our house, and endless possibilities for the future. This was our forever. This was our family. This was hope, given form and breath in the most beautiful name of all. Hope. The soil beneath my fingernails felt cool against my skin as I pressed marigold seeds into the earth. I'd become an expert at making things grow. Tomatoes, basil, hope. The hope was hardest to cultivate. I sat back on my heels and wiped sweat from my forehead with the back of my wrist. The late afternoon sun painted our small backyard in shades of honey and amber. It had been exactly 14 months since our last doctor's appointment, where Dr. Klein had delivered the news that wrapped around my heart like blackberry thorns. The ectopic pregnancy damaged your left tube. We should discuss other options. Other options. The phrase echoed in my mind as I patted down the soil. We'd tried everything. Timing charts, temperature readings, acupuncture, dietary changes. The failed IVF cycle had felt like watching a garden wilt despite perfect watering, perfect light, and perfect love. Luann? Marco's voice carried from the back door. I looked up, shielding my eyes from the sun. My husband stood silhouetted in the doorway, holding something white in his hand. An envelope. My stomach fluttered. That familiar dance between hope and dread. What is it? I asked, not moving from my spot among the daisies. He walked toward me with careful steps, as if any sudden movement might shatter the moment. His eyes glistened. It's from the clinic, he said, his voice catching. About the embryo we froze. The one they said had the lowest viability score. That embryo. Our Hail Mary. The clinic had recommended that we not even try to implant it, calling it a poor quality prospect. But we'd kept it anyway, unable to let go of even the slimmest chance. Marco knelt beside me in the dirt. His hands shook as he offered me the envelope. I took it, feeling the weight of dreams inside that thin paper. Inside was a single photograph, a blurry circle surrounded by measurements. And beneath it, words that made my heart stop. Successful implantation. Viable heartbeat detected. The sob that broke from my chest felt pulled from the deepest part of me, where I'd buried all my grief and guarded joy. Marco gathered me against him, and we sat there in the garden while the sun painted everything golden. The pregnancy announced itself in waves of nausea that crashed over me each morning. By week 12, I'd already used more sick days than I'd accrued. Principal Wilson called me to her office on a Tuesday. Luann, I hate to bring this up, but... She adjusted her glasses, a gesture I'd come to recognize as her tell when delivering bad news. The board is concerned about your absences. I'd anticipated this conversation for weeks. My second-grade students had become familiar with our substitute teacher, Mrs. Patterson. I pictured their confused faces whenever she took attendance, wondering why Miss Suarez wasn't there to read Charlotte's Web or help with their cursive. I know, I said, placing my hand protectively over my still small bump. I've been meaning to discuss this with you too. You have excellent insurance through us. Principal Wilson softened her voice and smiled. You could take unpaid leave and maintain your benefits. That evening, I stood at my kitchen counter, chopping vegetables while Marco reviewed numbers on his laptop. The steam from the pasta pot curled around us like a warm embrace. We can make it work, he said, closing the spreadsheet. My salary will cover the mortgage and basics. We can dip into savings for extras. I set down the knife and turned to face him. Are you sure? We've been so careful about money lately. He stood and crossed to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. This baby is worth more than any number in a bank account. I leaned into him, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with the herbs from our garden. Outside the window, I could see my daffodil bulbs pushing through the soil, early bloomers, eager for spring. By week 20, my body felt like a stranger's. My clothes didn't fit. My center of gravity shifted daily, and my emotions swung between euphoria and terror. I spent hours in the garden, talking to our child while I pruned roses and dead-headed petunias. "Your father loves the color blue," I murmured one afternoon, my back supported by garden cushions Marco had bought. "He painted the guest room, your room, in this shade called sea glass. It changes with the light, just like the ocean." The baby responded with a flutter, like butterfly wings against my ribs. Each movement reassured me that this was real, that after all our trying, life had finally taken root. Dr. Patel, our new OB, had warned us that anxiety was common after pregnancy loss. She taught me breathing exercises that I practiced while pulling weeds. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. The rhythm became my meditation, grounding me in moments of overwhelming fear. "High risk doesn't mean no risk management," she'd explained during our last visit. "We'll monitor closely, but so far, everything looks perfect." Perfect. The word felt fragile in my mouth. Marco started a tradition of weekend drives to different towns, searching for antique shops and farmers' markets. We'd return home with vegetables I couldn't grow yet. Strawberries in March, sweet corn in early summer. Our kitchen was filled with mason jars of preserves, a colorful library of the seasons passing. "We're nesting already," I laughed one Saturday, rearranging our pantry for the 3rd time that month. "Let's nest," Marco agreed, stealing a strawberry jam sample. "Let's fill this house with life." On Tuesday morning of my 32nd week, sharp pain woke me at dawn. I lay perfectly still, one hand on my belly, counting seconds. False contractions, Dr. Patel had said to expect them. But these felt different, insistent, not practice. Marco's arm tightened around me. "Luann." "It's probably nothing," I whispered, though uncertainty colored my voice. 3 hours later, we sat in the hospital's antepartum wing. Monitors beeped steadily. Our baby's heartbeat was strong and consistent. The nurse, Julia, had dimmed the lights and brought extra pillows. "Contractions are regular but mild," Julia explained, checking my chart. "Dr. Patel wants you to stay for observation." Stay, I did. 4 days blurred together in a haze of hospital gowns, ice chips, and gentle exercises to stop early labor. Marco never left, sleeping in the chair that converted to a narrow bed. He snuck in fresh flowers from our garden, purple petunias and yellow marigolds that brought summer inside the sterile room. I should be home tending to everything, I fretted on day 3, watching rain streak the window. "The garden can wait," Marco said, adjusting my pillows. "You're what needs tending now." By Thursday evening, the contractions had stopped. Dr. Patel prescribed bed rest, modified, meaning I could move around the house, but nothing strenuous, no gardening. The house felt too quiet without my daily outdoor routine. I arranged a spot by the living room window where I could see the backyard. Marco moved my plants, potted herbs, geraniums, begonias, to the porch railing where I could watch them. "Tell me about the tomatoes," I'd ask when he returned from watering. 3 new blooms on the Better Boy," he'd report. "And I think we'll have dill ready for pickling next week." His daily updates became my window to the outside world. Through his eyes, I watched our garden continue its seasonal dance. March gave way to April. The baby grew heavy, pressing against my lungs and bladder with increasing frequency. Sleep came in fragments, 2 hours here, 30 minutes there. I read pregnancy books, organized baby supplies, and wrote letters to our unborn child that filled a leather journal. "Dear little one," one entry began. "Your father built your crib last weekend. He's terrible at following instructions and even worse at admitting it. The white oak smells like his grandfather's workshop, a place he's told me about in stories. Everything in your room is chosen with love. Even the paint took 3 tries to get right. My mother arrived 2 weeks before my due date. She took over the kitchen with practiced efficiency, filling our freezer with casseroles and soups for after the baby's arrival. Her presence felt like a warm blanket, comforting and familiar. "You were 2 weeks late," she reminded me, peeling potatoes at the sink. "Your father paced a groove in our kitchen floor." I smiled, imagining that younger version of my parents, nervous, excited, unaware of the life that would unfold. On Mother's Day morning, I woke before dawn to another sharp pain. This time, there was no uncertainty. My water had broken. "Marco," I said calmly, shaking his shoulder. "It's time." The drive to the hospital carried us through awakening neighborhoods. Mothers would receive breakfast in bed today, gifts from grown children, and brunch reservations. I would meet my child. The delivery room faced east, catching the first rays of sunlight. Our nurse, Beth, drew open the curtains. "Natural light is good luck," she said, checking my monitors. The contractions came in waves, each stronger than the last. Marco held my hand, whispering encouragement and reminders to breathe. Between contractions, I glimpsed the daffodils blooming in the hospital's courtyard. Bright yellow faces turned toward the morning light. "The garden," I panted during a break. "Did you check the garden before we left?" Marco kissed my forehead. "Everything's blooming perfectly, just like you said it would." Dr. Patel arrived as active labor began. Her steady presence calmed my racing thoughts. Push, breathe, rest, push. The rhythm became my entire world. "Heads crowning," Dr. Patel announced. "Just a few more pushes, Luann." At 9:47 a.m., our son entered the world in a rush of fluid and sound. His first cry filled the sunlit room, fierce and perfect. They placed him immediately on my chest, wet and warm and impossibly real. "Mateo," Marco whispered, touching our son's tiny fist. We'd chosen the name months ago. It meant gift of God in Spanish. I cradled him against my heart, marveling at the weight of him, the realness. His eyes, dark like Marco's, opened briefly before closing again. His hand gripped my finger with surprising strength. "Happy Mother's Day," the nurse murmured, dimming the lights to let us bond in peace. Outside the window, the daffodils nodded in a gentle breeze. Morning glories climbed the hospital's arbor, and somewhere in the distance, our garden waited, filled with vegetables planted in hope, flowers nurtured with faith, life growing steadily beneath Georgia clay. I thought of all the seeds I'd pressed into that soil. Some had failed to sprout, others had withered despite my care. But enough had grown. Enough had bloomed. This garden of hope had yielded its most precious fruit. Marco settled beside us on the hospital bed, creating a circle of warmth around our new family. "He's perfect," he said, tracing Mateo's cheek with one finger. Perfect. The word didn't feel fragile anymore. 3 weeks later, I sat in our backyard for the first time since Mateo's birth. The garden had transformed itself while I wasn't looking. Tomatoes hung heavy on their vines, herbs burst from their containers, and flowers bloomed in riots of color. Mateo slept in my arms, wrapped in a yellow blanket my mother had knitted. His breathing, steady and strong, matched the rhythm of my own heart that had learned to beat for two. Marco appeared with glasses of lemonade, setting mine on the small table beside my chair. He'd learned to move quietly since bringing our son home, tiptoeing through diaper changes and midnight feedings with practiced care. "The garden missed you," he said, surveying the abundant growth. "It did fine without me," I replied, but accepted his offered arm when he pulled me to standing. Together, we walked among the raised beds, our son nestled between us. At the far corner where I'd planted my hope along with marigold seeds, an explosion of gold caught my eye. The marigolds had multiplied, spreading further than I'd intended, creating a carpet of possibility. They self-seeded, Marco explained. Dropped seeds all on their own and created this. I bent carefully, protecting Matteo while touching the vibrant petals. Yes, they had multiplied on their own, spreading life where I hadn't explicitly planted it, just as hope had seeded itself in our hearts during the darkest times, finding ways to flourish when we'd stopped looking. The sun warmed my face as Matteo stirred, making soft noises that would soon demand feeding. His needs had become the structure of our days: feeding at dawn, naps in afternoon light, baths in the gloaming hour when hummingbirds visited our garden. "Thank you," I whispered to the garden, to the universe, to whatever forces had finally answered our prayers. The wind rustled through the tomato plants as if in response. That evening, after Matteo's bath and before his bedtime feeding, I sat in the nursery rocking chair and opened his journal. The leather felt warm from the window-filtered sunset. "Dear Matteo," I wrote, "today you came home to your garden. The marigolds your mother planted while waiting for you have spread golden threads throughout our backyard, each bloom a reminder that hope, once planted, knows how to grow on its own." Outside, the night bloomed with cricket song and the sweet perfume of honeysuckle. Our house held the soft sounds of new life, Marco humming in the kitchen, Matteo's gentle snores, the whisper of pen on paper as I documented love's newest chapter. Some stories begin with once upon a time. Others start with long, patient waiting. Ours, this beautiful, hard-won tale of becoming three, had taken root in tears and determination, growing slowly like the hardiest plants that withstand drought and storm. Now, surrounded by the evidence of what persistence could create, I rocked our miracle child and listened to our garden's evening lullaby. The daisies would close their petals soon, the tomatoes would ripen further overnight, and tomorrow would dawn with new promises. I kissed Matteo's forehead and continued my letter, knowing these words would someday help him understand the depth of love that had called him into being. Inside this house we'd built together, our garden's most precious bloom slept peacefully, proof that some things are worth waiting for. Growth takes time. Love requires patience. And gardens, like families, flourish when tended with faith, even when the soil seems stubborn and the seasons uncertain. Outside, the moon rose over our backyard sanctuary where daffodils would sleep through summer, saving energy for next spring's show. And inside, 3 hearts beat in rhythm with life's sweetest song. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, sleepless nights, learning curves, the beautiful chaos of parenthood. But tonight, watching our son's chest rise and fall with the steady breath of dreams, I felt only gratitude. For failed attempts that taught us resilience. For seeds that knew when to grow. For a love that had outlasted doubt and bloomed into this moment. Perfect and real and infinitely precious. In our garden, hope had finally come to harvest.